Hey folks, my name is Andy Sito. I'm a musician, songwriter, performer, podcaster, living in Denver, Colorado. My guest this week is Cody, Wyoming-based singer, songwriter, and performing artist Kalyn Beasley. Welcome back to another episode of Middle Class Rockstar. I'm trying to get through these monologues today. Today is monologue day. I did David Starr right before this. I'm doing this one, and then I'm doing the monologue for Shane Smith. Shane Smith of Shane Smith and the Saints is on next week. We had a great conversation. And I'm recovering from a cold, so today's monologue day, but I'm a little bit nasally and stuffed up getting through these. Anyway, I was so glad to get to chat with Kalyn. He and I met through the Rocky Mountain Songwriter Festivals, and they run 3 festivals. One in Red Lodge, Montana, which is a southern part of Montana, and then just south of that, about an hour and a half maybe, is Cody, Wyoming, where they run the Yellowstone Songwriter Festival. And then on the third weekend of September, they do the Whitefish Songwriter Festival. So I met a gentleman by the name of Mike Booth who runs these festivals in 2021 when I was performing at the Dripping Springs Songwriter Festival outside of Austin. And he saw one of my sets and invited me to play a couple of his festivals in 2022. I did the Red Lodge Festival in June, and this was right after I got married. So Allie and I it was between our reception and our honeymoon. We kind of came up and had a weekend in Red Lodge, Montana, and man, is that a beautiful place. And then I came back up to Cody in September, second weekend of September, for the Yellowstone Songwriter Festival. And now this year, 2023, I got invited to back to Yellowstone the second week of September, and then the third weekend of September, I will do the Whitefish Songwriter Fest, and I'm really excited about that. I've heard it's just gorgeous up there. Anyway, I met Kalyn. He's been doing these festivals since they started them. He's a wonderful songwriter, and his newest album is called A Matter of Time. It came out on September 23rd, 2022. And he's been involved with these festivals. He and his mom run a bookstore called Legends in Cody, Wyoming. And anyway, we met through the festivals and we became buddies. I absolutely love his new album. Not Forget the Words is the 4th track, and that's been my favorite one so far, especially if you're an artist. It's very, very relatable. But his lyrics cut deep throughout the whole album. It's country, but it has a lot of other influences as well. And in our conversation, we talk about the new album. We talk about his upbringing. We talk about the rodeo. He did that into college, actually, at Montana State up in Bozeman. And he's got a really interesting story. He has a pilot's license, and he's also a wonderful musician and songwriter. So I'm excited to jump into our conversation. Really quick, I want to give a thanks to our sponsor, Narrator Music. For simple and affordable licensing for sync, visit narratormusic.com. Used to be narratorrf.com. Now you can just go straight to Narrator Music. And also, as I've mentioned in the last couple monologues, I'm opening this up to a couple new sponsors. So if you're interested in sponsoring the podcast, it's affordable, it's simple. Shoot me an email at middleclassrockstar@gmail.com, and we can talk about setting up a spot for your company on the podcast. If you'd like to support this show in a monetary way, but not a sponsorship way, I'm on Patreon at patreon.com/Andy Sito, SYDOW. There's a link to that in the show notes. If you'd like to support in a non-monetary way, completely free, give this podcast a 5-star rating and review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to your podcast. It just takes a second, and it really does help out a lot. Okay, I think that gets through all the stuff we got to get through. Here's my conversation with Kalyn Beasley. Kalyn, thanks for joining me.
Yeah, thanks for having me on.
Are you at your home in Cody?
Yeah, I'm at home. It's like 15 degrees out, and so I'm just kind of hanging out in my house. I've got Christmas going on right behind me, so we're full into it right now.
Yeah, and pardon my lack of country terminology, but what is that? What do you call that when you have a head or a skull hanging on the the wall?
Uh, it's just it's just a decoration. I didn't. This isn't like a hunt I did or anything like that. We had a neighbor who sold these buffalo skulls and pretty cheap, really. Like um, I think they're at the time they're only like $100. So I was like, well, that would look great on my wall. And so, it's from a buffalo ranch where they make they obviously harvest the hides and then all the meat and everything, and then pretty much try and use most of the buffalo, but obviously the skull is the big part of it. So it just looks good on my wall. That's all it's there for.
I bring it up. Most people will just be listening to this audio only, but I bring it up because the buffalo is wearing a Santa hat
It
in
is
the
wearing a Santa
background.
hat.
Yeah,
And my dog, our dog Remy, who's a border collie, he's super smart, but he's obsessed with the skull. And he's also obsessed with computer screens. So he's right now he's watching the computer screen, but almost always he watches the skull to make sure that it
really.
won't move. Yeah, he loves the skull.
Maybe there's something to it. Maybe you should listen to Remy. I don't know. Is it snowing up there?
We got about 6 inches of snow 2 days ago, but it's been cold, so it's stuck around. Now it's just sunny. So yeah, did you guys get any snow down there?
Uh, Denver avoided it. A lot of the rest of the state did, but we avoided it. It's just chilly here.
Yeah, we're not known for getting a ton of snow. Even though we're, northern Wyoming, we're technically a desert, but we can get snow for sure. And like I said, we got about 6 inches of cold snow, and it'll probably warm up and blow away here sometime in the next couple weeks, I imagine.
Well, so you and I met partially in Cody, I guess, in Red Lodge and Cody, but we met through the Rocky Mountain Songwriter Festivals, which happen in there's one in Red Lodge, the Red Lodge Songwriter Festival, that's Montana in June, and then in September, second weekend of September, I believe, in your hometown of Cody, there's the Yellowstone Songwriter Festival, and then the same organization does the Whitefish Songwriter Festival in northern Montana, third weekend of September, I believe. So you do, um, you're the guy. You do the festivals every year. You're the mainstay, right?
I seem to be the constant. Yeah. I was in when they kicked off the Red Lodge Festival 7 years ago or whenever it was. I was part of that, part of the first crop, and just being local and probably mostly to proximity. I was also kind of the Wyoming guy. So originally it was, they'd have the big Nashville songwriters, and then originally it was marketed as having, Montana and Wyoming songwriters. And since I was sort of the Wyoming guy that played a lot around Red Lodge and Billings and southern Montana, I was sort of included as that person. And then they expanded the roster to include other states, and then they changed the name to Rising Stars. And again, just because I'm close by and they don't have to put me up, I think I was just kind of part of it as it moved through Red Lodge, and then we gained Cody, and then Whitefish, same deal. It was I was lucky enough to be a part of those and have been a part of everyone since. I wasn't a part of Whitefish. I had a scheduling conflict this year. And then originally I was only a songwriter, and the MC for the event, he ended up getting sick. I think the third or fourth year, who's a good friend of mine, Al Cooper, he ended up not being able to be the MC. And so
Yeah.
last minute, like 3 or 4 days before the Red Lodge Festival, the director Mike Booth asked if I would like to step in and announce, the shows and kick off everything. And I did my homework and researched everybody, and kind of came up with my own little style for making sure that the shows ran smoothly and people were respecting the sort of format, the songwriter format, being quiet, being respectful. And they seemed to like that. So they had me back to do that role as well, as in addition to being a songwriter, I'm also the MC for those events as well.
Well, quick shout out to Al Cooper, and that's a cool thing too. I think every artist wants that relationship with the festival. I mean, I think most festivals have that artist that's there every year, that crowd favorite, and you've certainly got that going on. And you're also conducting interviews during the festival as well, right? I mean, you were interviewing me and some other artists, and you did a great job of that, by the way, curating that, and yeah, the whole thing was good.
Yeah, thank you. That's probably one of my favorite part besides playing my shows. That's probably my favorite part because I'm being a songwriter, I'm curious about how other people do this, and we sort of were talking about how hard it is to tour in our respective regions. You're down in Colorado, I'm up in Wyoming. We're fairly isolated from any sort of larger scene, and just you're isolated from the scene, but you're also then isolated from other writers and other creatives. So unless you're able to have conversations on the phone or FaceTime or whatever, you're not able to conduct those conversations about how other people are doing stuff. And so when I was approached about doing the interview portions in Cody that were a continuation of the interview portions that occurred in Red Lodge that I'd always attended, I always went to those. Those were usually in the morning, about 9 or 10 in the morning at the bakery in Red Lodge. They'd have my friend Wells Wrights does those interviews, and I'm always curious to see how people do those things. So I jumped at it. I was probably just as passionate about doing those interviews and asking questions and sort of for my own personal selfish interest on how people do things, but also trying to make it interesting for the crowd, because so many people, because these songwriter festivals are kind of a new thing, people don't necessarily know what they are. And so digging into the individual songwriters, on their process, on their inspiration, their motivation, their influences, but also being able to ask those questions in a way that's easily understood and make it entertaining for people who aren't necessarily creatives or in the business. And so I wanted to sort of meld those. And so anyways, I love doing those, and I've been lucky enough to be chosen to do those.
But it shows, and you're saying, and I think you're right. Songwriter festivals are kind of a newer thing, but they're popping up everywhere. What do you think they do for the music community in general?
They give us a place to play. you know, uh, I've and you can, I'm sure we can probably talk about this for hours about how many gigs we've played sitting in a corner of a bar, with people talking, or conversations that happen that are totally aside from the music we're trying to play, and we're kind of expected to be there just as an entertainment, and our artistic integrity sure takes a backseat to a lot of these opportunities we get to make a living, to make money. And that seems to be most of the opportunities that artists have. So what happens for songwriters to go to a festival that features just the songs, just the stories, is it really allows us to, an opportunity and an audience to share those songs and stories that we craft. We spend a lot of time, I know you do, and I do, cultivating and refining our skills and making these songs into something that's very entertaining. And when people have a chance to actually sit down and be in an environment where it's all the attention, all the focus is on the song, is on the story, people get a chance to really hear our individual personality and what it takes to really craft these songs. And so really these festivals just give us an outlet to do those. It's really a beautiful thing. We're really lucky to that these are starting to become more of a thing.
Absolutely, absolutely, and it's really cool to have one in your hometown as well. I'm sure. There's one in Cody, Wyoming. It's not a big town, but that's in the public comes out too. I noticed that in Red Lodge and Cody, everybody's there. It's a neat
Yeah.
thing, and yeah, I mean, I think too a a town like Denver, it might actually be tougher to bring people out because there's so many venues and so many things to do every night, and everyone's being pulled one way or the other. I think it's really cool that it's like, hey, here's what's going on in town this week. You want to go out and do something? This is what it is.
Yeah, for sure. And I've lived in Austin, so I know that in cities where entertainment is, it's not that it's not valued. It's just that it's probably taken for granted that there's so many choices for entertainment, from not just music, comedy and plays and
Right,
theater and sporting events. I mean,
right.
the options are almost limitless in a city that's as big as Denver. Couple million people, you've got something going on every single night, and they probably have websites that are dedicated to a calendar that just has whatever you want to do, here it is. Whereas in a community that's tight knit, small, like Cody or Red Lodge, this is an event that people look forward to all year long. And it's not just this event, but it's sort of communities like this. We have our events. We know what we're going to do on Labor Day. We know what goes on President's Day. 4th of July is a big deal. And it's sort of look forward to every year rather than like this weekend, there's, 18 events going on. And on Wednesday, there's 4 different things going on every week, So in a community like this, people value it a little bit more, and just in smaller communities in
Yeah.
general, I feel like because your options are so much more limited.
When I noticed that everybody knew each other, right? Walking around town, everybody knew each other. And there was something cool about that. And football season was just getting started too. And I'm not even sure I figured out where the football stadium was, where the high schoolers were playing, but I could hear it all over town. Like you're walking down the main drag and like, oh yeah, the Cody High School, whatever they're called, must have just scored a touchdown because
Yeah.
this whole town just erupted, and that's a really cool thing.
Yeah, man. I mean, we're small town USA, and there's so many towns like this across. But this is what it's funny you say that because it just reminds me of like a Justin Moore song or something. Like
Yeah,
there's just this is a sort of community that a lot of your songs are written about. But it's a super. I grew up here. It's a super tight knit community, welcoming. I think tight knit communities can have a stigma as being exclusive or not welcoming. I do feel Cody has as a tourist town too. It's kind of bred in the fabric of our town that as a gateway to Yellowstone, we are also very welcoming to newcomers and travelers and tourists as well. But and that's another reason why people choose to move to towns like this is I always say, for better or worse, Cody's 30 years in the past, and mostly for the better. There's certainly some things that you'd like to be a little bit more progressed or progressive in your small town, but it's just a town where people leave their doors unlocked, kids go out and play in the streets, and it's safe, and not that there's not bad things that happen, but by and large, it's your quintessential small town setting in the West that people idealize, and it actually is a real thing here, as you got to kind of experience for yourself.
and are you from Cody originally? Is this where you grew up?
Yeah, yeah. Technically, I always have to kind of make this distinction. I was born in Casper, which is right in the middle of the state, but I moved to Cody before I was 1. So I mean, technically, I'm from Casper originally, but Cody's where I've spent most of my life. So
My mom's whole side is from Rock Springs,
okay.
which is nowhere near Cody, but it's just a Wyoming connection. At what point did you first start getting into music? Was that something that was around your house growing up?
Yeah. So I didn't. Yes, it has. It's been around. My dad's side of the family, in particular, everybody plays, everybody sings. All my cousins, not everybody, but generally just about everybody, and it's sort of a thing. But I didn't get started playing music until later in life. I think it's one of those things where, as a kid, you're either gonna get into it right away, or you're not gonna get into it ever. I was sort of halfway into that, and I didn't get into music until I was about 19, and it was after my first year of college. I stayed up in Montana to gain my residency, so college was a little bit more affordable for me. So I stayed in Bozeman over the summer, and I bought 2 things that I knew I could do by myself. All my other friends went home for the summer. It was a summer after freshman year. So I bought a set of golf clubs and I bought a guitar. And I knew those were 2 things I could at least, I wanted to learn and I could do by myself. I didn't need any friends. And so I kind of spent that whole summer. I still suck at golf, but I'm quite a bit better guitar player than I was then. And so that's kind of when I got started, 19. And then my background is I rodeoed growing up. And so I went to college and I rodeoed at Montana State, and sort of simultaneously was playing more guitar, becoming friends with more musicians. For those of you probably don't realize, like, music and rodeo culture go together hand in hand. A lot of people that
Yeah.
rodeo play guitar, sing cowboy songs. It's sort of a thing. And I was kind of in that. And as I sort of got rodeoing less interested in rodeo, I became more interested in writing songs and playing, and started a band, and that's why we're here.
So Montana State for a year, and you were up there to. Well, explain to me what that is when you're up there to rodeo. What does that entail?
So it's kind of it's a weird thing that most people probably won't realize, but out here in the West, our colleges have, your typical college sports. But in addition to, a lot of your colleges, especially your junior colleges, will have a rodeo team. And it's a team, but it's not a team. It's a weird thing because you'll still gain points for the team, but rodeo is a very individual sport, right? So it's sort of both things. It's sort of like wrestling. I don't know if you're familiar with wrestling, but it's very much
Yeah.
like wrestling in that I compete in my weight division, but if I, depending on how I do in my weight division, it affects the points for the overall team. And so it's sort of like that. Um, but Montana State has a pretty distinguished rodeo team. And so it's a big part of their program. Huge funding. Lots of alumni fund it, and so it's really celebrated and embraced by the community. And it's just been there forever. And so to be able to rodeo at a place like Montana State at that time was a pretty cool deal from my
And
standpoint.
this is
Just
gonna
growing
s-
up rodeoing.
this is gonna seem like a really ignorant question, but like, what are the types of events that you would do? I mean, are when you're rodeo when you're doing that?
So yeah, no, that's a good question. I rode bucking horses. I also rope. I grew up roping and riding,
Yeah.
like rough stock events. I rode saddle bronc horses is what I rode,
Right.
and so just I was a rough stock cowboy, and then I occasionally would team rope as well. So yeah, but it's a pretty rough event. It's rough stock in rodeo is pretty hard on you, and so it's a young man's thing. So by the time I was about 23, 24, I was kind of a couple surgeries, a couple bad injuries. Just you got to, if you're going to succeed in something like riding rough stock and rodeo, you've got to be pretty tough. And not that I was tough enough, but you got to keep wanting to get on, even though you're, hurt and banged up, and it loses its luster pretty fast.
Did I mean was there a serious injury that happened to you that made you say, "Okay, I'm good. I'm done with this"?
There wasn't one that I wasn't just injured and then I was kind of done. I'd come back from a shoulder, a pretty serious shoulder surgery, and I was actually having a pretty good year, a couple years, and was really starting to move up in the ranks and get better and start to be known. Um, but I just kept. I wasn't. I wasn't. My desire to succeed wasn't as strong as my desire to not be banged up, because you're just hurt all the time. I mean, it's not like, even though you might not be seriously injured, you're just hurt all the time, and so that kind of gets old. Just kind of being banged up is just not fun.
So after your freshman year, you get this guitar and start playing music. And are you writing songs right away, or just trying to pick out some old Guy Clark tunes? I mean, where does it start?
Wagon Wheel. This
Yeah,
is 2006.
wagon
So
wheel.
Wagon Wheel was not yet the overplayed song that it's become. And yeah, so growing up, back kind of my backstory a little bit. My dad had a band growing up, still has a band, still plays. So I feel like one of my sort of strong suits, or sort of something that was on my side as far as getting into music, was I knew songs really well. I knew the words to songs. So all I really needed to do was learn, chords and how to strum and how to play. But the words I just knew. I knew hundreds of songs. I grew up in the 90s, listening to 90s country. So I knew, a bunch of 90s country songs. I knew all these great cowboy songs that my dad would play. And so I think that can be a roadblock for a lot of people, in that they kind of always have to chase down the words, or have to have an iPad in front of them, or that wasn't a roadblock for me. I knew the words. And
Yeah.
so I wasn't writing songs right away, but it was sort of just, I picked it up. I this is almost 20 years ago, but thinking now, I think I picked it up pretty fast, so I was able to mimic these recorded songs, like I said, Wagon Wheel and whatever other popular songs of the day was. But I do remember the first song I learned was Wagon Wheel, and I played it. I don't play that song anymore.
Well, yeah, it got. I mean, at first, remember that song was kind of indie. It was kind of underground. It was like you heard of this group, Old Crow Medicine Show. Have you heard of, they wrote this song, like Dylan had this chorus, right? And then rightfully so, it became a huge hit because, it is a great song.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's Sweet Home Alabama. They're not huge hits because they suck.
Yeah.
They become
Yeah.
overplayed because people love them so much. So yeah, it was at the time wasn't like a huge Old Crow Medicine Show fan. There was this song that, I think it was just right time, right place. I was just in college and had influences coming in from all different angles outside of me just growing up in my small town. I was suddenly around all these college kids that were introduced to me to new music. So that was probably where I ran into it. But yeah, it's funny how that song's now just, you can't play it. It's just it's off the books.
Yeah, exactly. So now at what point did you start saying, okay, I'm having fun playing guitar when no one's here and I know all these songs. Now school's back in session, you're doing your thing. At what point are you thinking, okay, you know what, maybe I could do this. Maybe I could really make a go at this.
A couple years down the road, I played junior hockey for a couple more years till I was 20. So did that. And then, kind of between playing hockey in and out of college, in and off the rodeo team, early 20s, 22, 23, I kind of started playing at more like college parties. I had some friends that, like, one friend had a fiddle. The other friend, he was pretty good guitar player. He was they were both on the rodeo team. So we'd have these big college parties at people's houses, and we were sort of the entertainment. It had to have been terrible. And thank God, cell phone proliferation hadn't exceeded maximum velocity at the time, because there's no recorded evidence of those shows that, to my knowledge. But that, alcohol helped as it does. I mean, you say what you want about booze, but it can get you out of your shell, and it can be that kind of lubricant to get you to do something that you may not be comfortable doing necessarily without it. And so just, being around the party scene, having friends that wanted to hear these songs, and we were just sort of the band.
Yeah.
And, during this time, early 20s, I started pinning some songs down, just as we kind of all do. They kind of sound like songs you like, and you just kind of put new words to them in a way.
Yeah.
That's how a lot of my early stuff was. It was sort of sounded a lot like the songs I was listening to at the time. And that's, like I said, I got less interested in rodeo, more interested in writing songs, and I started this band with some friends, and like a real band, like went and started playing bars and stuff. And
what was the band called?
We're called the Bad Intentions. Our first band name was called what was it called? It was called the High Beams, because we got paid in Jim Beam and what was that other whiskey? Anyways, we were called the High Beams because we got paid in whiskey.
Yeah.
And 10 High and Jim Beam was what we drank. And so we were the High Beams. And then we decided we needed a more legitimate name, way cooler name. So we decided to call ourselves the Bad Intentions, which is, can't go wrong there. And we were a pretty hot band, like, at the time, because we had this really good fiddle player who was just, he was the best musician in our band by a long shot.
Yeah.
And but if you got a good fiddle in the band, everybody else can just be, as long as you can start a song and finish it, and everybody's drinking, everybody's having fun.
Fiddle players have to be good musicians, I think.
They do. Well, they play by ear, and so they can tell you if you're not in tune. They can tell you, they can tell you more things about what you're doing than what you even know you're doing.
Yeah.
So we got him in the band, and we kind of took off. Like like I said, my dad had a band and was gigging around Wyoming, so he helped us get jobs like right away. I think we started our band officially in November. By January, we were off and running. Like we had gigs, and throughout that whole summer I remember we played Music on Main our first year, which is this huge event in Bozeman.
Yeah.
In front of the entire town of Bozeman at the time. Was, everybody would come out for it. They'd do 7 of these Music on Main events in Bozeman. We were one of the bands. We'd been a band for 6 months, and we played it. And we were just off and running, just because, again, we had the connections through my dad who could get us jobs. We knew friends in college that were like getting married. So we'd be their wedding band. We knew all these college bars around town that would have us, and rodeos, and So that kind of made the decision easy for me. Like, I don't want to rodeo anymore. Like, this is way more fun. I don't even want to go to college anymore. So I didn't. I stopped going to college altogether at that point as well.
My band always tried to play in the Legion bar or the Eagle on a Thursday night in the summer and start right after Music on Main because we just get that like flood in from people right after the
Did
event.
you live in Bozeman?
No, but I've played up there
Oh,
a whole bunch of times.
okay.
Yeah, yeah. And actually it's been a couple years. I think since COVID we haven't gone up, um, yeah, we'd go up every summer a couple times and do those gigs because it was a great spot to play.
Oh, right after Music on Main, people have just been, drinking in the streets and just ready to have a good time. Yeah, that's a ready-made party is what it is.
A ready-made party. Yeah, we drove 10 hours for that ready-made party twice a summer.
My head
um,
hurts just thinking about it.
yeah, yeah. Did you finish at Montana State? Did you finish a degree?
I did finish, but I didn't finish at MSU. No.
Okay.
Um, I went back to school when I was 30. So it was kind
Okay.
of a lingering thing it was something that was important to me to finish. So I did.
So when did this band fall apart? Or has it fallen apart? I mean, did it just go on for a few years?
Like I said, our momentum was pretty strong right out of the gate, and we decided in year two to crowdfund a record. So at this
Yeah.
point, I had written a bunch of songs, and we decided we were going to crowdfund a record in 2012.
Yeah.
So 2012, I must have had enough songs at that point, 2011, 12, that we felt comfortable. We were going to make, our first original set of music. And we did, we crowdfunded like $12,000 or something like that, and went down to Nashville and cut this record. And then our plan was we were going to take over the world. Montana wasn't big
Right.
enough. Wyoming wasn't big enough. We needed to take the music to the people. And our idea was we were going to move to Austin, which we did. We moved to
Yeah.
Austin in fall of 12. So we put out the record like September 12, and that was like our going away party. Hey, thanks for the memories. Next time you see us, we'll
Austin
be on
city
TV.
limits. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. We'll be
Yeah.
next time you see us, like we'll be too big for you guys to deal with. And so moved down moved down to Austin like right after that. And we played about a year in Austin, and then the wheels just kind of slowly broke apart as they do with bands. Like I said, our fiddle player was incredible, and so he started kind of getting jobs with bigger bands, which is that I didn't realize at the time. That's 100% what happens, is that your band usually gets picked apart by bigger bands where they can ride. They don't have to ride in a van anymore or drive the van. They can just sleep on a bunk in a bus if they're good enough. And
Yeah.
even if they have a less ownership in the group or no ownership, that $200 a night and a bus bunk beats sleeping in a van. So
Right. And 25% of whatever royalties there may be.
yeah, exactly. Which there was none. Yeah, we owned 100% of nothing. So yeah, the band fell apart, and then so this is like 2013. I was kind of done with Austin. I kind of had my fill of it. I'd broken up with me and my girlfriend had broken up. My band had broken up. I was sleeping on a couch, and I was just homesick for Wyoming. So then I at this point I kind of I was writing songs for this entire period, but my songs became less band oriented and more singer songwriter, sort of songs. So that's kind of when the iteration that I'm in now began.
So when you came back to Cody is when you started penning Northerner.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. Actually, I started it and sleeping on a couch in Austin. I started writing some of those songs. And then, yeah, basically I took about a year off, worked on a ranch, kind of was not done with music, but just burnt out on it. Worked on a cattle ranch. So I farmed and ranched for about a year. And then just slowly gigs started coming my way up here, and got back after it. And some other things happened too. We started a business, started the bookstore. So I didn't have to ranch anymore. I could be an inside cat, and just started doing more of this stuff.
Well, yeah, so I know, and it still stands. There's a bookstore called Legends in Cody, Wyoming, and you manage it when you're not on the road still. Is that right?
Yeah, my family owns a bookstore in Cody, and I started it. Me and my mom came up with the whole idea, and so yeah, when I'm probably Monday through Friday, I'm in there managing it, whatever needs done as far as whatever you think managing is. That's what I do.
Yeah.
I
And
scrub the toilets. That's what I really do. I make sure everything looks clean.
was there, I mean, doing the ranching thing, you enjoyed that as well, though, correct? Is there a reason why you wanted to make a career shift?
I did enjoy ranching, but the ranching was sort of tied to the relationship I was in at the time, and
Ah,
so um, the ranching job didn't end because of that, but the bookstore took precedent over the ranch. I mean, the ranch was sort of in limbo. Like one manager had left, and it didn't have anybody to run day-to-day operations, and so I was sort of just there. I didn't have anything else going on. I just got back from Austin. The ranch manager had quit, and so the gal I was dating, we basically, it started one day at a time. Hey, do you guys want to go up on the mountain? And my background is obviously um, that sort of stuff, and so yeah, we'll go up on the bighorns and make sure that the cows are okay. And it was just kind of, oh well, you guys want to stay up there for a week? All right, we'll stay up there for a week. And it kind of eventually became to where I stayed there throughout the rest of that summer, all fall and winter, and then helped plant in the spring of 15. And then in earnest, my mom decided that she really did want to do this store, and the ranch had got new owner or management, and so it kind of allowed me to just shuffle out and do the bookstore thing. So it's just kind of one of those things that just happened.
and why a bookstore?
My mom had retired relatively early, and she'd been retired for a couple of years. And her dream was always to have a retail store. That was just, she'd done her career, but she was still had quite a bit of energy left, and she'd done her market research to figure out if a bookstore would work in a small town. She figured out the numbers would probably add up if she did it right. And again, I was just I was there. Like I was the extra set of hands to help her do this thing. And eventually, we love it. I wouldn't trade doing the store for the world. It's something I always would like to do, actually.
Yeah.
But the store was just sort of her dream, and I just was there and helped her accomplish it.
Yeah. Yeah. And are you a big reader? Are you a bookworm yourself?
I am, and I always have. That's probably another thing, is I just was having always been interested in books and reading. It was a no-brainer for us to do a bookstore. We're both big readers, so yeah, I still do read quite a bit.
Let's jump into the new album. And not to totally skip over uh some of this other stuff here. Sorry, you may have heard Maggie, just my cute little puppy, smacking her tail all over stuff in the room. I don't know if that picked up on the mic or not, but Northerner came out in 2016, and then a couple years later, Frontier News in 2019. Your new one is A Matter of Time, which came out on September 23rd, and you've been promoting that very hard. You've been out playing, um, and you've been doing the social media thing. I know people have mixed feelings on playing the social media game, but you're making reels and doing all the trendy stuff. You've kind of got a good system figured out.
Oh, I don't know if it's a good system. It feels obligatory. I mean, because I don't have anybody else pushing my boat, really, it's like I got to be the one to do it. And if I don't do it, it doesn't get pushed. I I know people out there that have really good things going for them, but they feel conflicted about self promotion. And it
Yeah.
is, man, it's a thing. It feels hollow and it feels self-serving, but I don't know how else you'd try and have a career if you're not willing to do it. So I agree, man. It's I'm conflicted with all that stuff too. Um,
Yeah.
but again, if I don't do it, nobody else is going to do it.
How did this record come about? Where did you record it? And how long did the process take?
Process took it started about 20 um 2020, I really started focusing on writing in 2020. I would write, but prior to 2020, I would write, and I'm going to try and come back to the question here by doing a little bit of background.
Yeah.
I had written sporadically before, kind of when inspiration took me. And in fall of 2020, I really decided to go ahead and buckle down and write regularly and try and make it a thing in my life to where I was trying to do it just about every day. And so I was starting to reap some of that by middle of 2021, that I had like 15, 20 songs that they weren't all great, but out of those, I had like, 6 or 7 that I was really wanting to record. But because I had self-produced my 2 previous records, Northerner was a full band record, but Frontier News, my second one, was just acoustic. And that record, I just wanted that acoustic record to just be me and a guitar, like live takes,
Right.
However many takes it would take to get a full take. I just wanted my voice at that time to be on record. I didn't want it to be tuned. I didn't want it to be, it was barely mixed. It certainly wasn't even mastered hardly. It was just really raw, but I wanted that feel for it. But the next record I knew to make, if it was kind of either like shit or get off the pot, I was either going to start making real records, or I was just going to kind of do this as a fun thing forever. And so when I felt like I'd finally had enough songs, I started hunting for producers, somebody to help me really make a polished record. I'd kind of been averse to like making radio songs, like
Right.
for some dumb reason, like my artistic integrity, was too good for it or whatever. But now I was finally at a point where like, no, I want songs that sound good enough to be on the radio, or at least songs that sound like they could be on the radio, right? Like,
Yeah. Well,
like
and
a radio
that's
station wouldn't get a copy of it and be like, what's this,
well, and that's sort of a thing. I mean, with all types of music, but I know with country in particular, there's so many different brands of it, and it's like, oh, I hate that pop country stuff, but I'm Red Dirt or I'm Outlaw. Check this out. There's lots of different brands, and I think people take pride in their type of music, their type of country music, and they say, this isn't that radio crap that the pop country is. But the best of that stuff is still radio worthy songs, right? I mean, it's I don't know.
Yeah, I agree, man. Things change as you become older, as you go through your artistic journey. Like, unless you just quit and phone it in, like, you'll never know what the rest of that journey looks like. But
Right.
for me, it was like, super independent, screw pop radio, country radio, all this. And I've sort of at this point anyways, and things will change and as my journey will continue, but I want to be somewhere in the middle there. I want to have artistic integrity. I want to write good songs, but I want them to sound really good when you hear them in your car, right? Like, I want both of those things. And that's what I wanted for this record, was like, I want to write the kind of songs I want to write the best kind of songs I can write, but I want them to sound really good when you hear them, in your headphones or in your car or whatever. And so that hunt was just me waiting to find the right opportunity, find actual producers who would take these songs and make them as good as we could make them. And my friend Kalyn Smith, actually, shout out to Kalyn.
Hey, cool shirt.
Yeah, dude, Kellen's awesome. He's just the best dude ever. I do have good friends, and Kellen's a good one. And he had made a record down in Dripping Springs, Texas, with a couple dudes named Tyler McCollum and Cody Angel. And he'd made this record called Rancher Blues that came out like fall 2021. And this record's amazing. If you're listening to it, look it up, Rancher Blues, Kalyn Smith. And I'd had some producers lined up, and they fell through, just wouldn't call me back, just wouldn't. It was really annoying and kind of heartbreaking too, because you just feel a little bit butthurt about it. Your feelings are kind of hurt when you feel like somebody doesn't want to work with you. And
Yeah.
sort of another side note, we have the friend who made a what was called a cowboy compilation. I had a song on that cowboy compilation called Rodeo Town, and those
Yeah.
guys had heard Tyler and Cody, or Tyler had heard it, and he was wondering. He kind of was inquiring about whether I was going to ready to make a full record or not. And when my original producer team had fallen apart, my friends sort of said, he's looking for producers. They said, oh, they basically said, have him give us a call. We can go. And this is like January last
Yeah.
year. And by, into January, we're talking, we'd maybe talk 2 times. And so we'd book session time for into February, like last week in February or first week in March, and which couldn't be soon enough for me because I was ready to go. So, fast forward, we go down to Dripping Springs, we make this record, and
Yeah.
then, had to put all the pieces together. It takes a while, like
Yep.
those things, they can happen fast, but it's never fast enough for your liking. But you also want to make sure that it doesn't happen too fast and you're just rushing through things. So
Sure.
uh, we had a single ready to go by end of July. Put my first single out ever, and then put another single out and put a record out in September. So it took a while, but that's sort of the story of how it happened.
Well, and even just after the first 10 minutes of our conversation, um, I can hear you in all over the songs and the lyrics, right? Just us having a conversation, like, oh, these are real, these are authentic. Uh, this is who he is as a person and a writer, and it's cool to see that reflected in the whole album, and it's there with the production too, right? The songs are great, but you clearly went all out with the production as well and got the right product made.
I think so. I'm real proud of it, and it's um, I think one of my friends, I sort of was having a beer with him and we were talking about it. And I was like, I really hope, I know this will move the needle, because anytime you put something out, it's going to move a needle, right? That's the purpose of it. It's just how
Yeah,
far that needle moves it's totally out of your hands. You do the best work you can. And he just says, well, it's just another brick in the wall. And I couldn't agree with that more. It's
yeah.
not my last project, but it's certainly my best one to this point. And if I can top this one, I'll be really happy. But I feel like I've done my best work to this point.
One of my favorite songs, maybe my favorite on the record, is "Not Forget the Words," and I actually wanted to read a few of the lyrics. People want to know about the girls in the road, all the crazy things that happen after the show. Somewhere, somehow, this myth got around that all we ever do is party with the crowd. But if you could just picture for a second with me a movie theater full of empty seats, and the credits roll, and one guy's picking up the trash. A lot of the time, it looks a lot like that. It ain't romantic, it's pretty damn rough, and it's the hardest on the ones you love. Reciting poetry to a bunch of drunks, we sit up there and we tell jokes, tell stories about songs we wrote. In between, we take shots, smoke some beers. Keep in mind, this goes on for years. You only get good by going too far. Keep track of where in the song you are, and try to ride the line as close as you can. What I'm trying to make you understand is, and we go into the chorus. I love that that verse, and my favorite part of that is once you've described it, you say, "Keep in mind, this goes on for years." Just as a side note, um, and it's so very relatable as a touring musician. But I also think the way you wrote it, it's relatable to anybody in any industry, just common working class individual. Um, did you think about that when you were writing it? Trying to appeal it to everybody, or was that just, hey, this is how I'm feeling right now?
No, uh, I wasn't trying to relate it to anybody. That's really just like, I was trying to write like every performing songwriter's song. Like I've been trying to write that song for a while, and I was just having conversations like this with other writers and other performers. I just wanted to write a song that like you would listen to, or anybody else who's played to nobody or played hard gigs and traveled a long way to do them, that they would listen to those and go like, yeah, that's how it happens. I mean, that was my goal in that one. It was for songwriters.
Yeah. Well, uh, I love it. That's my
Thanks, man.
favorite. So And I don't know. I just say again, it's so relatable. Even after you play a packed house one night and then the next night it's empty. I mean, it just happens all the time, and it does. It goes on for years.
It does. It does. It's you know, man, this is the best part about talking to other artists is that you know exactly what I'm talking about. And you've talked to guys that are the level above you and they'll say the same thing. You know, I've talked to guys that are a couple levels above me, you know, and it's the same thing. They'll have a great show one night and the next night they're wondering, you know, what in the hell are we doing out here? You know,
Yeah,
it never ends.
it never ends. Touring out of Cody, Wyoming can't be easy. It's hard enough out of Denver, as we were talking earlier. It's like 8 hours minimum to the next big city from Denver. Touring out of Cody is tricky. I know you do a lot of regional stuff. You're going up into Montana a lot. You're doing hometown stuff. You're collaborating with other writers in Montana and Wyoming and doing shows, linking up that way. I know you were just in Vegas a couple weeks ago as well. How do you tour out of Cody, Wyoming? And can you just do it certain times of the year? What's the formula for that?
I try. I don't necessarily. I don't know that I don't know what you call what I do touring.
Yeah,
I know people that really do like go town to town to town. You know,
yeah,
sleeping in a different hotel every night. Because because I have a business here in town, it sort of limits my opportunity to get out on the road and really, um, really like get out of my areas. What I do try and do is I do try and play as smart as I can because, you know, like I don't, I don't have a lot, but I do have bills to pay and I have, you know, a house to pay for and responsibilities here at home. And if I just can't go too far away from home because it just gets harder to get people to show up to see you or to get any sort of guarantee, you know, I'm sure I could go book a show in Missouri, but they might say, you know, we'll give you $25 and, you know, the best burger you've ever had. And
yeah,
it's like, I could go do that, but that would make zero fiscal sense for me. So what I'm really trying to do now, and again, that was sort of the other purpose with making this record was I wanted to have a record that would sort of travel, that sort of have some songs that could get into ears through Spotify algorithms and all that. And start to broaden my circle a little bit. Cause
yeah,
I found that logistically and financially for me, if I stay within about 300 to 400 miles from home, I can do music as a pretty good side gig. Like it's not my full-time income, but it's a pretty good, like it makes my bottom line. It makes me a little bit extra, you know, money, but basically it's like a sort of a second half career
yeah,
if I do it smart, if I stay, you know, close to home or can stay with friends or have a gig that it makes sense. I have the same conversations with my friends just because I'm in my 30s, so it's a little different. I don't necessarily just want to go sleep on a couch in any old place, you know, just try and wing it and hopefully run into somebody at the bar that'll let me sleep on their floor. Like I don't do that stuff anymore. And
yeah,
I have friends with kids and they have the same thing. Like they can't leave their house for $150 and go drive 6 hours. Like it just doesn't make any sense for them. So we kind of have the same little weird sunlight. We kind of have the same goals in that, you know, we'll try and find something that makes sense and it's starting to increase. Like I was able to go to Vegas and make that work. Merchandise is starting to pay off a little bit more.
The
Selling t-shirts.
merchandise is great, by the way. I'm supporting a honky tonk
Yeah,
arcade hat. These are really you have really well done merch.
thank you.
Yeah, if you're listening to this podcast and you go listen to the record, go to the website too. Check out or Instagram and check out the merch. You got some cool stuff.
Thanks, man. Yeah, I just set up my Shopify account, so you can go to
Cool.
my Instagram and there's links there. But yeah, so again, merchandise helps sort of
Yeah.
close up, you know, loose ends and stuff like that. But it's to me, it's not it's trying to be smart and trying to be economic with it and not get out there too much. But it's my circle's getting bigger, so that's the good news. It's starting to pay off. But it would be nice to be younger and be able to go do those crazy things like really getting in your car and going somewhere. But I don't really do that anymore.
Yeah, no, fair enough. And I mean, it all sounds realistic, and you're expanding your radius every day, and I think this record has helped with that a lot. Have you started thinking about what you're going to do next, in terms
Yeah.
of a record?
Yeah, man. I'm already, I mean, I started writing it basically when I got back from Austin. Was wanted to get something else coming right away. And so now I'm just trying to figure out where I'm going to do it, who I'm going to do it with, if I've got enough good songs. So yeah, I'm definitely, because I feel like music's a bit of a motivation, not a motivation thing, but um, oh, what's the word I'm looking for? Like it's you got to kind of keep it rolling, like
Yeah.
uh, once you sort of get momentum, that's the word.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
once you
Okay.
sort of get something
Yeah.
going, it's good to like not go 3 years without people hearing something new from you. So my goal is in the next year to sort of to have another project out, and so I'm writing pretty consistently, trying to get another batch of songs that are ready to go out the door.
I wanted to ask earlier when you went back to college, what year was that? What did you finish your degree in?
I went back when I 2018. I got a wild hair and enrolled in I enrolled in a private pilot class at the community college here in town. They have a flight program here in Cody, and I told my mom, I said I want to go back to school. I want to start. I don't know what I want to do, but I want to start working on it. I want to start knocking it out. It was sort of a cloud that hung over me, and I enrolled in this private pilot class, and I came back to her and I said, I think I enrolled in the wrong class, because this I'm not just in this class, I have to book flight hours. And so I
Yeah.
suddenly was like flying planes. Like the second day of school, I was getting in a plane for the first time. And ultimately I got my private, and then I got my instrument rating, got my commercial and twin engine. So I have a degree my degree is in aeronautics technically, but I'm a commercial pilot by uh, my degree, whatever.
No kidding. So, I mean, is that something you want to pursue in the future as well, or?
Uh, I I think it's great to know how to land a plane. I think that's honestly a life skill that if I didn't, the only thing I really wish I would have done is get a law degree. I think that's the only thing that would have been more useful than knowing how to land a plane would have been having a law degree. Time will tell. But no, I don't think so. I'm very happy. I really want to push this music thing. I think I can do it. I'm doing it.
Yeah, you're doing
I
it.
want to keep doing it, keep getting better, and that's where my heart is. But my goal is like to eventually have a plane and fly it around. And I've talked to different artists that do fly like to gigs, and I'm like,
Oh,
that would be
yeah. That's the life.
that'd be the life.
Interesting you talk about that being an important life skill. It very well could be at some point, right? And you hope to never have to use that life skill
I'd
in
be the guy.
yeah. Yeah, but
Is there anybody here that could land this plane?
yeah, you raise your hand. Yeah, and I want to be on that. I don't want to be on the plane, but if I have to be on one of those planes, I hope you're on it.
Yeah, it's I kind of say that in jest, but it's so much fun. Like it's one of the most fun things I've ever been a part of. Is I've done some cool stuff, but definitely
Yeah.
knowing how to fly is one of the coolest things I've ever done. It's also one of the hardest things I've ever had to do, which was part of the purpose I went back to school. Is I was 30 and I felt like I really needed a challenge. And be careful what you ask for when you say you want a challenge, because working a full-time job, tour, playing music, and then going back to school for that is challenging for sure.
Well, thanks so much for taking the time. I love the record, and I think our listeners will too. I appreciate you chatting with me.
Andy, I love your music so much. I just want people to know that
Thank
I've
you,
had
man.
so much fun listening to your songs. I think you're one of the most creative, interesting songwriters that I've been able to be around. And I really appreciate you having me on this podcast, man. Thank you very much.
Appreciate it. All right, once again, that's my conversation with Kalyn Beasley. His new album, Matter of Time, is available everywhere you listen to albums. One more time, if you'd like to support this podcast in a monetary way, I'm on Patreon at patreon.com/Andy Sido, SYDOW. There's a link in the show notes. And if you'd like to support for free, Give this podcast a 5-star rating and review wherever you listen to your podcast. It just takes a second, and it's a huge help. Make sure you tune in next week. I'll be having a conversation with Shane Smith of Shane Smith and the Saints. And that's all for now. Have a great week. Thanks, folks.